Hello everyone, I hope all of you are doing well. Today we are into the class number 3 of how to write good answers, and this class is going to focus on one particular thing, which is what makes for a good answer. What are the qualities of a good answer and what are the components of a good answer? And I have also done a blog post on this. You can see this blog post on my blog manujjindal.in. I will post the link also in the YouTube channel's description and on in comment. But here you will see I have given a very detailed analysis of how to what are the various components of a good answer. In this first particular class, we are going to discuss one component. In the next class, I will discuss another component, and I will also give you a sample answer. This is the sample answer that I have written a model answer so that you can get an idea of what kind of you can put my words into practice, and you can also with me you can go ahead and practice for this. So what makes for a good answer? And there is a very simple uh, reply to it. There is a simple answer to that, which is content. Content and the information that you are providing in the answer of UPSC that you are writing in that 150 or 250 words, that is what is the most important thing. Now, a lot of people tell you make diagrams, make drawings, have some kind of underlines, use a lot of flow charts or diagrams. My experience, have written three mains. So, my experience in these three mains is very simple and straightforward, which is that if you write very good content, and even if it does not have good diagrams, flow charts, any kind of drawings or underlines, maps, even if you don't have that, but if you write the content that the UPSC is asking the question, if you write the right kind of information, if your articulation, if the way you write is good and you're touching all the points, then still you will get very good marks in the answer. But the other way around doesn't work. If your answers content is very average or below average, but you're using a lot of diagrams, you're using a lot of drawings or underlines or these kind of things, flowcharts, you will still not get good marks because your content is not up to the mark. So one thing you should remember is just making diagrams, just making flowcharts, just making maps or drawings, just underlining something and using different kind of pens, that is not going to get you extra marks. I personally used to use only one kind of pen, and that is what got me. Still, I got one of the highest marks in GS in the last 4 years. I got over 450 marks. So, how did I do that? I did that with a good content, good information, good answer, information wise, analysis wise, content wise, that I wrote. So, content is the key. Content is what we want to focus on, uh, and not on anything else. So basically, what you write in your answer, your words, the information you provide, whatever you put down, the analysis you build around the answer, that matters the most. Of course, presentation and diagrams, etc., have some role to play. If your answer content is good, and along with that, you are also providing a supporting diagram or a supporting map. Along with that, you are providing some kind of a supportive flow chart or a diagram. Then that will yield to one or two extra marks, and you can do that maximum in 4 5 questions in the entire paper. You can't do it throughout the paper. Your every question cannot have a flow chart, your every question answer cannot have a diagram. Only where it is required, like a geography question. If there is a geography question, you might need a particular kind of a diagram or map, right? Because in geography it is important to show that, and it is easier to also understand any geographical concepts through these maps and diagrams. So it really depends on the question, but don't try to force it. Don't try to just do it even if you don't know how to do it, even if you have not practiced for it, even though it has not become part of your preparation, or if the question simply doesn't require it. Don't try to force it. No, so in I have seen in coaching institutes and in many other different places, you might be told that diagram to banane hai, har question mein banane hai. History question mein, what is the need of a diagram? Unless it's a geography question, unless it's a question where you need to provide a certain diagram to get to a particular point. If you need to provide a flow chart to show the process flow, then only you need the diagram, right? If it's a history question, if it's a simple economics question where there is no diagram needed, then you definitely can just do with writing good content, and that will really get you good marks. So Of course, diagrams help you to present something in a better way where it is required, but it is not necessary that you need to do it in every particular question. And you must remember one thing: when it comes to handwriting, it should be clear and clean. You don't need to have a very hi-fi answer, writing. You don't need to have brilliant handwriting in order to get marks. As long as you have a decent readable writing, that will do. And of course, if you're writing in paragraphs, I would suggest try to write in points, because points help the examiner to swift through your copy really fast. So the faster the examiner is able to read your questions quickly, the more he's able to see that you are coming to the points, you are answering the points what is asked in the question, then the faster, easier it will be for that person to give you marks also. All right. So it is very important that content should be very good. If the presentation is really good but the content is suboptimal, that it is not going to help you. Okay, so far we have discussed how content is the king, the information, the analysis, the points that to provide in the answer is what will get you marks. Diagrams, underlinings, flowcharts, maps, etc. should be used only where it is required, and that will not be more than 2 or 3 or maybe 5 questions, that too in GS1. GS2, GS3, you don't need that many of diagrams and flowcharts, maybe in 1 or 2 questions where there is a process related question. So now the question arises, of course, the natural question that arises is what actually makes for a good content? I've been telling you content, 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 but what is good content? Okay, what are all the different points that we should be able to cover in our answers in order to make that content good and get good marks? Okay, so now we are going to see the first thing. I have various things that I will show you throughout the video series, that what makes for a good content. This is the first thing. And the first thing that makes for a good content is basically nothing but the fact that the answer itself, the content that you're writing, should showcase your understanding of the question that has been asked by UPSC. So answer should be to the point. It should not be beating around the bush. It should be answering what has been already asked by UPSC in the question. A lot of times, a lot of students, aspirants are not able to understand what the question is asking. So, or they might not even know what the question is asking. So they will just write something. But writing something will not get you marks. If you think that writing something will get you marks, that is not true. Of course, if you are able to write something that is related to the answer, you will get some marks, but you have to be exactly to the point. You have to answer what the question is asking, then only you will get marks. So ask what is answer what is asked in the questions. Aspirants who might not be aware of the topic asked might not be able to write well on it, and the precondition for doing this is that you should know, you should have studied, you should have properly covered the topics. Unless you have covered the topics, how will you be able to get marks, right? Unless you have studied, unless you know that topic, how will you get the marks? So the simple solution to that is that you should know your current and static current affairs and your static portion well in order to answer your questions. So I will give you an example here so that you can get an understanding of what I'm trying to say. In 2021 GS3 paper, UPSC asked a very simple question, very straightforward question. And like this, UPSC asked a lot other straightforward questions also. And this question was, distinguish between capital budget and revenue budget and explain the components of both these budgets. Now UPSC, now I want you to think about this question for a second. If you know capital budget and revenue budget, then think about this question and think about two things. What is the question asking, number one, and how will I answer it? So what is the question asking? The question is asking difference between the capital budget, okay, and the question is asking the difference between the capital budget and the revenue budget, right? If you have studied budgeting, you will know these differences. It is given in NCERT. If you study NCERT properly, these differences are very well given in the NCERT. All right. So, and there is also a second question in the in this particular question. There is a second question. Explain the components of both these budgets. So you have to differentiate, and you have to also explain the various components of these budgets, these different two types of budgets. So here I have told you these are the two questions that are asked. So you should be able to answer both of these in your answer. And of course you can't just write anything, because you need to know the difference between capital and revenue budget. कुछ ऐसे ही फट्टा नहीं मार सकते. You have to write exact things, otherwise how will you get marks? So first pre-requirement is what? Have the concepts clear. For any question that are asked, if you have the concepts clear and if your fundamentals are very strong, then you will be able to answer it in crisp and clear way and a simple way. I will show you how through the answer. So here is the answer. This is the model answer. It is in 160 to 70 words only. So this answer follows the word limit. It follows the time limit. You can write this answer easily in 7 to 8 minutes also. So the first thing that I do in this answer is I define what is budget, because it is asking about capital budget and revenue budget. You can differentiate between the two, and there you can tell the definition of both. But to start the question, to write the introduction, you have to define what the budget is, because these capital budget and revenue budget are actually components of a budget. Capital budget and revenue budget are both components of a budget. So first you should define the larger or the bigger concept here, and that is budget. So budget can be defined as a financial statement which provides for yearly estimated receipts and expenditures of the government. कितना सिंपल सा मैंने अपने लैंग्वेज में ये आंसर लिखा है. आई हैव रिटन इट इन माय ओन लैंग्वेज. आई हैव नॉट टेकन दिस लैंग्वेज फ्रॉम द बुक. Only the keywords are included, like receipts, expenditures. So it is a financial statement yearly which gives the receipts of the government, that how much the government is earning and how much government is spending. So that is what a budget is. Even in a house you make a budget, right? How much salary you get and how much you will spend. Similarly, government makes a budget of how much you will get and how much you will spend. So that is what a budget is. Now straightforward, after that I have jumped into the answer, into the main component of the question, which is what is the difference between revenue budget and capital budget. And I have drawn a simple table here, because this is a differentiating kind of a question. When they ask you a question where you have to tell differences between two concepts or three concepts, you should always draw a table. So here I have drawn a table, simple table. यहाँ पे WordPress has edited this table. So of course, but in your paper you will just you can just draw a table like this, in your exam like this, and you can write capital budget and revenue budget. And notice one thing here, what I have done. I'm just going to delete this. Just notice what I have done here. I have directly taken this language from the question. What is the question asking? Components of revenue budget and capital budget, and it is also asking me the differences. So I have taken both the things. I cannot tell components differently and differences differently. I can just write it in one particular table, and through that I can finish my answer. So one point I will write about I will show the components also, and along with that I will show the differences also. So the first difference is, or the component is, now what the first one should always be defining. You should tell what is capital budget, what is revenue budget. So here capital budget can be defined as budget that accounts for expenditures that are fixed and one time in nature. Revenue budget can be defined as budget that accounts for expenditures that are recurring or regular in nature. So here in my own language, using some keywords from NCERT, from the book I have read this concept from, I am just defining these two concepts, and through that I am telling the differences, right? Then I have told about how this accounts for capital budget, accounts for capital receipts and capital expenditure, and this accounts for revenue receipts and revenue expenditure. So these are the components also, and this also shows the difference between the two. Two components of capital budget are capital receipts and capital expenditures, and two components of revenue budget are revenue receipt and revenue expenditure. This point got repeated. I think I made this little bit of mistake. So I think ये दोनों पॉइंट सेम है, तो आप एक पॉइंट को लिखने की जरूरत नहीं है. You should just write it once. So maybe here I could have written some other points. So here tell me one point that you can write, because I have little bit messed up. I have repeated these points. Anyways, again you see I am using the language from the question also, so that the examiner is reminded that I am answering the question. Then finally in the last point, ये थोड़ा सा मैसअप हो गया. I think here I can see I've given 7 points, but here I think the numbering got messed up a little bit. Anyways, you can just redo it yourself. So the fifth point is capital receipts include market borrowing, etc., and revenue receipts include tax revenues, right? Then the other point is capital expenditure is expenditure of the government which creates assets, and revenue expenditure includes regular expenses of the government. For example, spending on salaries, officers, repairs, and buildings. But capital budget is spending on defense equipment, roads, etc. So like this, you can write in table format and you can write a model answer. Okay, I will correct this, but overall, I am pretty sure you got the idea. Okay. Note here there is no conclusion needed. What conclusion will you write? It is just asking you difference between two different economic concepts. So you should just write those differences. There is no need for any kind of conclusion. Okay. Now here also note that what I have done is I have provided a table. So examiner is easily able to see the differences and the components of these two. I have not provided it in point format or in paragraph format, but a table format because it is asking for differences. And the other point is, even if I had written this in points, would I still get good marks? Of course I will get good marks because my content is good. The answer that I have written, the quality of that answer is good. But table makes it easier and it might fetch me extra 1 mark or something, right? Now here you can read this. Basically, these have a very specific definition, these concepts. You should know these concepts in order to write them well. But there are also some questions which are harder than this. This is a simple question. It's a straightforward question. It is straightforward asking you about differences between capital budget and revenue budget. But some questions are, all questions in UPSC are not created equal. Some questions are harder, in which you need to break down that question, and that I will discuss in my next class. That what is that hard question. I will show you that hard question example also in my next class, and you will be able to understand the exact way to handle harder questions also. All right, so I hope this class really helped you in understanding what makes for good content, and what is the first thing that you need to include to make your answer good, to make your content in the answer writing good. Let me know if you have any questions. Happy to answer them. Take care. Bye bye.